What is up, everybody, and welcome to episode 51 of the Trainer Scoop podcast. Today, I'm joined by Hunter Pauley. Hunter is a coach, as you can see in his background, if you're watching our video, a coach for Renaissance Periodization, a group that I really respect, a company that does great work putting out very, very high quality content that's educational in terms of anything hypertrophy, strength, fitness related. Hunter is a registered dietitian and holds a, you're going to have to help me remember this acronym. It's been a minute. Is it certified strength and conditioning specialist, or did I botch that completely?
No, dude, you're right. So to be honest, like I've messed it up a couple of times because people ask me and I'm like, I'll say corrective specialist or I'll get conditioning corrective mixed up. So yeah, CSCS, you said it right though.
CSCS holder. Where did you go to school? I definitely read this on your bio, but I'm slipping my mind.
Yeah. So I went to school. So originally I was going to a community college because probably like most people out of high school, you have no fucking clue what you want to do when you get done, or you think you have a clue. But I went to a community college for 2 years, just kind of doing general ed, stuff like that. Thought I was going to go into nursing, actually. Mainly just for money was the main driver factor there. Did 2 years there, year and a half, I think, while working at Costco to full time, and then transferred to Bozeman, which is MSU, Montana State University. So Montana has two main universities. We have University of Montana and Montana State. So I went to MSU, Montana State, and started out as exercise science down there. It was good. I did 1 hour and a half, full semester of exercise science. And then someone actually introduced me to nutrition. And I was like, I can't do anything with nutrition. Like there's no degree. And then I started doing more research, and that's where I kind of found out about dietitian and what they did. And back then it was still up and coming for like a sports dietitian. There wasn't a lot of sports dietitians at the time. So high elite NFL teams, stuff like that, they weren't really in that area yet. But I did eventually switch over to dietetics and finished my degree at Montana State University, which is actually the same university that I also did my internship through too, as well, just to help save cost. Would have loved to go somewhere else for that, but with RDs and internships, you actually have to pay for it. You don't get reimbursed for that. So you can drop more money just on an internship that lasts 8 to 9 months than you did in 4 years of college. So
Dang, I did not know that. It's pretty interesting. But
yeah.
yeah, that's really cool, man. And are you from Montana originally then?
Not originally. So I was actually born in California, Northern California, so Fort Bragg, Willits area. Parents moved out in 99. So I'm 27. I've been in Montana since then. So I've grown up here. I've lived in Montana. I consider myself almost from Montana. We've lived in various places around the state. I've lived as far as 40 miles one way to the nearest town. We were 10 miles back from a dirt road, and then another 25 miles or so to actually get into town on a 2-lane highway. So I've lived way out in the boonies, and now I'm actually living in Missoula, Montana, which is in the same area as Dr. Mel and Dr. James, who you probably know from RP. So I'm actually about 15 or 20 minutes from them as well. And just recently, there is possibly another RP coach that could be moving to Missoula, as he actually applied for a strength and conditioning job at University of Montana here.
Who would have known that Montana is becoming such a happening area for RP, man?
Yeah, dude, it's the last best place is what we call it. So keep it a secret, though. Keep it a secret.
Right. Man, I can only imagine you telling like some of the people from your hometowns or, where you've lived in the past, like what your job is and like what you do for a career now. They're probably like, what? Like that. I imagine it's probably not as prevalent out there.
Yeah. And that's kind of like an interesting topic too. It's because people ask me what I do for work, and it's kind of, when I say, well, I'm an online fitness and nutrition coach, and people are like, oh, well, what do you do? Like, and so I have to kind of explain the process. And a lot of people don't think you can actually make a living off of that. So I do RP full time. I've been doing RP full time for about a year now. And, if you're good at the job, get a lot of referrals, get a lot of people coming back. So it has been obviously my main gig and main source of income for the last year.
Nice, dude. Living the dream,
Oh, absolutely, dude.
Speaking of the dream, recently, what was it, like last week or 2 weeks ago, you were out there in the Tetons, just kind of like setting up shop, doing some work out there, exploring, I'm sure.
Yeah. So you've probably seen the truck on Instagram, but for everyone listening, I own a 2021 Tacoma that is pretty decked out for overlanding, dual battery setup, rooftop tent, all of that. So I was fortunate enough to actually drive down to Salt Lake City. Had to get some work done on the truck that no one else could do here. Perks of working remote, obviously. I can take the work with me. I don't have to ask for time off. I just have to be a very responsible adult. That comes, it's something that comes with the job, but was able to take the work with me, work from the truck, work from the warehouse where the truck was getting worked on. As long as I have internet and a hotspot, I can pretty much work remote. Now, it is nice. I work from dual monitors at home. So when I do travel and I'm like out of my little space and my environment, I'm working on two 27-inch monitors. It can be a small pain in the ass, but it's doable for, a week or week and a half.
Yeah, man, that setup looks so cool. It was reminding me, I can't even remember the trail, but it was like the Teton Trail where it's like, I want to say 40 some miles of hiking and camping out there. So it's like,
oh damn,
so
yeah,
cool. And yeah, that's cool to be able to do both, man. That really is. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's a great gig.
Yeah, sweet. So I always like to try to get to know my guests a little bit, help the audience know the guests a little bit. So what were some of the things that initially got you hooked into lifting and then pursuing that into college and, well, partial part of college and then beyond?
Yeah. So a lot of my fitness, first touch of fitness really actually goes back to high school. I was, I weighed a lot less in high school. I basically had hit my height, but not my weight, in high school. So I was still 6 foot, 6'1" in high school. But I only weighed 140, 150 pounds at the very most. So I was very skinny. And I actually got into fitness down in Florida. So I went to a high school down there. IMG Academies is in Bradenton, Florida, which is pretty well known now. They've actually expanded quite a bit, but I was able to attend IMG when it was a little bit smaller and you weren't just a number. So I went there for golf actually, and surprisingly with golf, there is still a fitness aspect to it that you need to complete, and the workouts were mandatory there. I hated them. I hated training. I hated fitness. And I think everyone kind of goes through that phase. Like, I have yet to really meet someone that when they start training, they're like, I fucking love this from day one. Because most of us, when we start, it's like, you're dreading it, you're dreading going there, you're dreading to train. But there's always this transition. And I tell clients too, I'm like, there is going to be this transition at some point where it no longer becomes just an absolute chore that you're dreading. And it becomes part of your lifestyle and who you are, your identity as a person. And down there is when I really transitioned to it's a chore to it's part of my identity at that point. And really that happens, I feel like, for a lot of people when they start seeing those changes or when they start seeing those performance increases. And that's what really happened with me. Going down there, we did like a run test. It's actually part of like, they probably followed the CSCS guidelines for a lot of stuff, because I kind of, when I was taking the test, I'm like, I did that fucking test. I remember that. But there's this, like the shuffle back and forth and this like longer run test. And I remember going down there, it was like dead last out of everyone. So, male and female, dead last for time and stuff. And it kind of just opened up my eyes a lot. And I started to see that when I was going to these training sessions and, following what the coaches were saying and nutrition protocols, because they actually had dietitians down there at the same time too. I started to improve pretty drastically. And when I left there, I was actually in like the top 5 for the golf program in terms of fitness at that point. So it kind of, after that, I was like, okay, I wanted more, because a lot of what we did was conditioning. Actually, it wasn't a ton of like heavy lifting, compound stuff like that. So after leaving there, that's when I kind of just started diving into more of like bodybuilding.com forums. Like, I'm from that era of, Lane Norton was still on there posting content. That was where you went to, like, if you needed to know something, where did you go? Bodybuilding.com forums. So after high school, I just kind of continued on. I just did my own thing. I had no real clear idea of how to train. I was training 7 days a week, believe it or not. I was like, this is what, more is better, right? Typical bro split, like chest, back, arms, shoulders, legs. And I would just essentially repeat and cycle everything after that. But just started diving into the forms a little bit more, learning about training, about nutrition a little bit more at that point. And this was kind of also when I transitioned from, nursing focus potentially to exercise science, and then eventually dietetics and nutrition. So it kind of just evolved from there. I did a physique show in NPC, no fucking clue what I was doing. I was like 8 weeks out. I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna do this show. Just followed what was on bodybuilding.com forums. Layton Norton had a contest prep thing out, so I followed his stuff. And then met an individual at the gym. His name's Paul Campbell, actually a coach for Layton Norton now. He owns his own gym now here, but we met up and we've been friends for 9 years at this point. He kind of was a mentor for me, still is. But we hit it off, and he kind of, directed me on more appropriate training, which was back then, and eventually prepped me for my second and third physique and then natural bodybuilding show too. So it kind of just snowballed really after high school of just learning more, growing more, and also being up with the current research.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. So it's safe to say you're pretty sweet on the links then, right?
I haven't golfed for a long time. So when I left there, my handicap was a 4. I don't golf as much anymore just because of the mental aspect of it. It's a very tough mental game, and for me it just wasn't very fitting, because to get better where I was, so I was good, but to go to that next stage, it's a lot more commitment. At that time I was like, I'm not going to commit to this. So then that's kind of where lifting, I mean, with lifting, you're always continuously proving. You're not really having a major like setback. So you could, unless you got injured, obviously, but with golf, it's like you could go out and shoot a 70 and then you could just have a fucking string of weeks where you're shooting like 85 and you're like, screw this game. And that's kind of where I just couldn't handle those ups and downs that much like that with golf.
100%, man. I played in high school. I sound washed up saying that, but I definitely kind of echo that. And it was funny because, I didn't really start lifting until I was about 15, 16. So my sophomore year of high school. And, my freshman year, I felt like I was pretty sweet because I was like competing for those varsity spots. Sophomore year, made it to the varsity team. Then that winter started lifting. And then I don't know if it was just lack of like technical proficiency, but like the fact that I had pecs after that really just messed with my swing. Like I couldn't in the backswing extend like below parallel or like below 90 degrees. My range of motion was limited. I started hooking like a motherfucker. I got really discouraged. And then I was just like, I'm just here for a good time for the rest of high school. And I took lifting more seriously, kind of similarly to you. So definitely some parallels there.
Yeah. I mean, I'll still get out and I'll go to the driving range and swing the club, but it's definitely, with more muscle, it's a little bit more difficult. Stuff gets in the way. So, but it's still fun. Like I enjoy it, and again, it's not as serious as I was back then. It's just more for enjoyment at this point.
Right. Very cool. So how many shows have you competed in? Was it just like the 3 that you were talking about, or have you done more than that?
I just have done 3 so far. And that was, the last one was back in 2016. I just don't have a real desire to get that lean again. It's something that a lot of clients too, they're like, I want to get lean, like 8 to 10% or lower than that. And something that a lot of people don't realize is the trade-offs that come with that. And, going through it now and knowing what those trade-offs are, and just mentally and physically, I just don't have a desire right now to do that. Doesn't mean I won't, down the road again. But for me right now, I know when I start going into a show or cutting like that, I'm not growing anymore. Like my goal at that point is to maintain what I have. And I also want to be a very competitive athlete, especially on the natural bodybuilding stage and stuff like that. And I know for that to happen, I have to really take advantage of the years that I still can grow, not trying to just constantly cut and be very lean year round all the time, because ultimately it's not going to get me to that point. So, if I compete in 5 years, when I'm 32, believe it or not to say that, it might happen, it might not, but right now I'm just enjoying training, and I'm actually going to start going through a massing phase here in July, probably for the rest of the year.
That's what it's all about, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did the RP transformation challenge in 2021, and I lost like 23 pounds. And toward the end, you definitely get to feel it's kind of shitty. And you have to push even beyond that for a contest prep. So I definitely see where you're coming from on that. And it'll be cool to see where you go with it too. So very nice. Springboarding off of that, you're talking about massing. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your approach to your diet currently. We can talk about kind of like how it's formed up to this point as well, some of your formative education, but what's the strategy, some of the overarching principles, and how did you develop those?
Yeah, so actually right now, I have coached myself for the last 10 years. Most recently, though, I've actually just decided to hand things over. So Pascal from Revive Stronger, nice. I reached out to them, Steve and Pascal, and I handed things actually over to them just because with coaching other clients already right now, it takes a lot of my energy. So what I found the past couple of months, especially being super busy with coaching, is that my personal training and nutrition was kind of taking a back burner, which isn't good, because ultimately where I'm at right now in, with 10 years of training in that intermediate / advanced phase, I need to be doing everything that I can right now to really take advantage of that. So I was like, okay, what can I do here? So I actually reached out to them. I know a couple of other RP coaches that have worked with them in the past and recommended. I was going to go with Jared or someone else at RP, but it's one of those situations where I wanted something completely separated from RP, just so I'm not in the same neighborhood or anything like that. So just actually a couple of weeks ago, I started with them. Prior to that, though, what I was doing was a lot of spin-off of the men's physique templates. So I ran those for numerous years, 2 to 3 years off of from RP. And I essentially adjusted or changed how I would want to see them. So sometimes I wouldn't run a metabolite phase or do a longer hypertrophy block. And for me personally, what I have found works best is running 5-week blocks with a 6-week deload. I just think personally for some people, 6 weeks might be a little bit too long. Some people can handle it. But for me personally, after running and training for such a long time, I just found that 5 weeks works better. And that's just something that comes with training experience and whatnot. So for the past 4 to 5 years, it's been purely hypertrophy. I can't remember the last time I've gone under like 3 or 5 reps. That's like how long it's been. So definitely hypertrophy focused. And then for nutrition, a lot of it was just intuitive, and I've used the RP diet app obviously in the past. Main reason why I was using the RP diet app is because when it comes to massing, I become a little bitch and I can't eat a lot of food, and I needed, something to basically encourage me to eat. Hence why I reached out to another coach too, because it's accountability. Hence why people, come to RP for coaching, is they're looking for accountability. And that's why I reached out. Needed extra accountability because I know, just like if you've ever gone through a massing phase, you kind of get to the point where you're having self-doubt. Happens during a fat loss or cutting phase. You have self-doubt in, if you're coaching yourself or whatnot. And overall, that's why I reached out to Pascal, because in the past, I know I bitched out at a certain point and I'm like, I'm too fat. I'm not eating enough food, or just like with a masking phase too. If you slack on intake for a couple days or a week, you're losing progress. Just like if you're on a fat loss phase and you tend to overeat a couple of days, you're kind of losing a little bit of progress, whether it's for a week or 2 weeks. And I didn't want to get to that point anymore. I want to try to push as hard as I can in this upcoming mass phase, because last ones I know I could have pushed harder, but I didn't.
Yeah, I think that's really cool that you said that, man. To think, and I've stressed this point in past podcasts, but we got an RD, successful coach with a very reputable company, and he still had to have that extra layer of accountability, whether it was from the app or from now a coach. I'd say probably for me personally, for a lot of people, having that coach on the accountability is like next level. Also, I felt you 100% on that bulk. That's when I first used the RP Diet app, and I was going from like 206 to 220 for a powerlifting meet. And it had me up to like 600 plus grams of carbs for a time. And I would have never done that if I didn't have the insights from the app. So either way, I think it's very good for a time. Just as a general piece of advice to the people out there, invest your money and you'll definitely learn some things, whether it's from a coach or from like a great product like the diet app like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm very interested to hear about your time back in like undergrad. On your bio, I believe on the RP website, you talked about volunteering for some of the sports dietitians there. And I'm sure, that kind of translated over to the internship that you did for your RD. But what was that like to work with them at that time?
Yeah, so Montana State was the only university in Montana, as far as I know, still that has a registered dietitian. Excuse me. For the athletic department or team. So I didn't really know about it until I think my junior year. So I didn't get really involved until my senior year. I would have done a lot sooner if I knew about it. But basically what we did is they had a fueling station for athletes to come in. Football was in the morning, so we would get there, I think, at like 5 in the morning, because they would train in the morning or they would have practice later, basically making sure that they're getting a shit ton of carbohydrates, a little bit of protein, obviously, as well. So a lot of chocolate milk, stuff like that. We would do protein smoothies for them as well. But the football team was like my main focus that I really worked on there. So I was there early in the morning, and then obviously after their practice in the mornings also too, making sure that they would have protein shakes. So a lot of calories. Like, I mean, you think about these guys, and if the head dietitian there was actually making sure, like, if they needed to gain weight, then we would have more calories for certain players. So we actually would use Ensure shakes. I'm not sure if you've heard about those. They're like 8 ounces or 9 ounces of. They actually taste good. I know some people don't like them. They use them in the hospital for patients that aren't gaining weight. Actually, some of them taste like ass. Some of them taste really good. The strawberry ones, I'm not a big fan of strawberry, but I will tell you, the strawberry ones, I could fucking slam those like left and right. But anyways, we would essentially make weight gainer bags for players that needed to add 10, 15, 20 pounds before the next season. So it would have like an Ensure shake, Nature Valley granola bars, stuff like that. We would hand those out. We would prepare them, stuff like that. So a lot of it was just giving food. And then obviously we would get a sit in with the sports dietitian there, and they would do caliper tests for body fat measurements, and we would do little presentations and stuff like that. But it was just cool to see kind of what she would do. Obviously she would travel with the sports team as well. Mainly football was the biggest one, but she covered all sports, which was a lot. So the fueling station was open like in the morning, afternoon, and then in the evening as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
do you think that had any like formative impact on you? Did you particularly like it, or did you learn anything, or was it just like, I did this and I was there, it was good, but what was that like?
Yeah, I think it's a great experience, mainly because you see what a sports dietitian like does at a university. Not saying that all of them are going to be exactly the same, but you kind of get insight on what potentially a day to day could be like for them, and it really redirected kind of what I wanted to do because I was always like, I'm going to go work for a sports team now. I'm going to work for a college, and just like with dietitians in a inpatient setting in a hospital where you just get used and used and used and a lot of times overworked, especially in the hospital setting, where sometimes you see too many patients on the day and you're kind of underpaid. Same thing can happen with sports dietitian in a university like that. I don't know the exact pay scale she was making, but I felt like she was working a lot of hours more than she needed to. And that's kind of what you have to do, though, to also move up and potentially get into, a top 10 university. And then from there, eventually get into potentially an NFL team. And at that point, yes, the pay is definitely going to be worth it. But it's like, can you get through those first, 5, 10 years, how long you're down there, to potentially get up to the top or the upper ranks. And the thing with sports dietitians, once they get into that top position, there's only so many NFL teams or professional sports teams. And once those slots are filled, most likely those individuals are not going to be leaving for some time.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very similar experience. So I don't know if I mentioned this at the beginning, probably didn't, but I went to Ohio State, and very similar situation where I had seen the head of the football team dietitian come through and speak at one of our classes. And after that, I was like blowing his email up 3-4 times a semester. Never got picked to do it. And that was kind of like one thing, which was not like the whole reason, but I was like, man, I don't know if I can't get picked to be a volunteer, I don't know if I'm going to make it in this dietetics field, because I originally had started out with dietetics, then switched to a little bit more of like a combination between like health promotion, nutrition, exercise science. But
yeah, and I did the same thing too. Of like during my internship, I was reaching out to all these people. It's like, hey, I will volunteer for free, and you don't hear from anyone.
Yeah, might be some politics and just extremely busy schedules. A lot of volunteers involved with that process. But I had a
Yeah.
question for you in terms of like RDs in general. The I guess like the upper academia of nutrition beyond undergrad. One kind of, what's the word for it? I guess one thought that I had toward some of the professors and some of the higher level researchers at Ohio State, could just be at Ohio State, was I thought it was like kind of dogmatic within what their approach is to, of course, at the time, the recommendations for protein was, and it might still be, less than like a gram per pound. They were very, very, it just seemed like they weren't really interested in hearing like other thoughts. One of the professors that's pretty big into research is Jeff Volek, and he does a lot with keto. And he actually, I think he was removed from one of the boards, the nationally recognized nutrition boards, because of his, very hard stance on keto. So did you ever encounter that as you were going through the process, or as you've like met with other RDs?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So in the internship, this is a really good spot to kind of see the differences, because with the internship, we had people from all over. So there's people from Vermont, Texas, California, Oregon, coming to Montana for the internship. So you really see the difference in schooling from each place. You also really see the beliefs or biases that people bring with them when they're coming from different areas like that, mainly due to, I would say, the location they came from or the education that they received as well. So for my internship specifically, it was sustainability based, which obviously is not my first choice, but that was kind of the focus. So that's kind of the crowd that you are going to attract. With professors in undergrad, it was kind of the same way of like, same thing with protein. If I told someone to even have 0.5, half a gram per pound of body weight, or even 0.8, a lot of times the professors would say that was excessive or it's too much. Now, obviously, there's going to be certain situations like am I going to tell a 350-pound person that, hey, you should be having, 0.8 or even a gram per pound of body weight? No. But for a healthy individual walking the streets, is it going to be harmful at the end of the day? No. But I think the lower end, which I've never even touched before, is like, I think if you actually do the conversion, I want to say like the recommended amount is like somewhere around 0.3 grams per pound of body weight, which is like super low when you consider that, or when you think about that, which for an average size male, it could be down to almost like 60 or 70 grams per day in some cases. Like that's 2 Fairlife protein shakes, which I basically could consume in or less than 6 hours. Like, so it just goes to show like there's different views and biases on certain things. There was some professors still that were stuck on artificial sweeteners, for example. That was it's still a hot topic. People love bringing that one up. A couple other things, beef, meat products, stuff like that, going fully plant-based, which is fine, as if it's for religious reasons or personal reasons, it's whatever. But I think it can also be part of a healthy diet as long as you're also getting a handful of fruits and vegetables. So there's just lots of, and I think that the biggest thing with college is that there's so much information out there now. Like you've seen that everything is constantly changing. Like what was 6 months ago is not the same for a lot of stuff, training or nutrition wise. So when you have a professor that's following certain, course outlines and stuff in a book, like it's not going to be exactly up to date. Like stuff is always being updated. So they would almost have to like buy new books probably like every single year to update those guidelines and whatnot. But the same thing happened in the internship. There was a lot of, I don't want to say conflict, but a lot of disagreement on certain topics and subjects that kind of got a little heated in certain areas. For example, beef was a very popular one. Dairy was another one. Artificial sweeteners and protein intake, I feel like are very popular ones. Not so much keto or lower carb in the internships that I was in, but definitely the other 4 that I mentioned.
Yeah. I guess it is pretty cool though to be exposed to those like variety of opinions and to see how, geographically those things can change. And I'm sure, their living circumstances within state to state definitely influence, the way things are done or, their opinions on things. It's something that for like, maybe, I don't even know if I have anyone under 18 that listens to this podcast, but one thing they don't tell you is if you are looking to pursue like higher academia, I think each university, like you were saying, kind of has its own little bias. Like Ohio State's was for nutrition, definitely more of the keto type research. And then they had a lot of pretty prominent researchers do like environmental, for exercise science, I should say, like environmental circumstances, a lot of endurance, which like wasn't really my thing. I would have rather tried to go. I think it's like FSU has like the muscle lab down there. That would have been really cool.
Yep.
But something to keep in mind if you are picking your undergrad or your graduate program as well. Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
What made you go on to get the CSCS?
So actually my mom, believe it or not, she saw someone, I forget, a famous trainer, I think for The Biggest Loser. I forget his name, had it. And she was like, you need to get that, because she knew it was recognized. Like when someone has a CSCS, it's not like your average cert. You actually have to go in, like you have to get fingerprinted to take this test. You're actually in a testing center. So it's a legit test. It's not like it's open book or anything, or open computer or anything like that. So a lot of people recognize it as something like it's pretty good. You also have to have, I think they're going to be changing it up here or coming up, but you have to have or be partly through a college degree to even sit for the exam. So she really pushed me to get that. And I know a lot of RDs had it too when you're starting to look at, credentials and stuff. And eventually I want to get my CSSD, I think it is, certified something sports dietitian. I forget the actual name, but that's kind of down the road. So I did that. I did the CSCS actually during my internship, studied for it, passed it in 6 months. So I kind of just wanted all of it done at once. So once I got the RD, I had both of them behind my name.
You were good to go.
Yeah. And again, so kind of just highlighting with the CSCS, it's kind of, have you taken it yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So for everyone out there that if you are looking to take it or haven't taken it, it's one of those tests where you really just have to learn and study what the book wants you to know, like their methods, their approaches, because there was a lot of shit in there. I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is not even, it's what they believe in, what they've written. So there was stuff with nutrition and with training on there. I was like, this is definitely not what I would do, but it's what they want. So when you go into that test, just make sure, like, kind of dump everything else that you've learned beforehand and just, I don't want to say memorize, but just keep in, what you've read over the past couple of months. That's what you need to know. Forget everything else that you've learned for the testing period, and then you can bring it all back in afterwards. It's a hard test. It's a solid test. There's just certain things I'm like, this is fucked up. So
do you remember any specific examples?
There was some questions about like increasing testosterone, which, obviously on like rest periods. It was like super short rest periods, increased testosterone. They were like comparing rep ranges, and they were like very distinct with their cutoff ranges for the reps. So, with RP, it's like 5 to 30 for hypertrophy at a certain intensity. With them, it was like 3 to 6 is like just purely strength. And then it was like 6 to 12 is like hypertrophy. And then like anything above that, which is all endurance or something like that. So there's just it's just very distinct cutoffs on certain things with nutrition or training. There's form videos too that you kind of have to like judge and like look at someone running, which I was like, I'm never going to look at someone fucking running and be like, because I don't even do it myself.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, dude, your stride's way off. You're running wrong. So there was running videos. There was like squat videos. Another really weird one too is spotting someone on like a dumbbell press. Sometimes you spot down here. Sometimes you hold their wrist or whatever. For them, the CSCS and that test, you had to say you should spot them by the wrist, which, it's kind of like a personal preference. Like some people like the elbow, some people like the wrist, but with the wrist, they just view it as like you can control in case they start to lose control of the lift a little bit more. So just weird stuff like that. That was kind of on the test, and just, yeah, I don't know. It's probably changed now, obviously, since I took it, but that was kind of what I experienced.
Yeah. I just had I have the ACE certification, and there were some things where I was like, this is not right, but I know that they want me to pick this, so we'll go for it.
Yep, exactly.
The spotting of like dumbbell bench, I'm a big nerd, so I watched this dude. He's a streamer, plays different video games, and then he also did like a workout stream because he has a sick home gym. His name is Nick Merckx, for anybody listening that might know him. And his trainer was like spotting him at the elbows, and then some people were like chirping in the comments like, that's not how you do it. Like, you hire a trainer who doesn't even know how to spot. And everybody was just popping off, going back and forth. I'm like, it doesn't fucking matter. I get
yeah,
those things, man.
Yeah,
that's good to know though. That's something I haven't heard about the CSCS. So something to be on the lookout for as we get to studying, and for anybody else that takes it. That's good practical tips out there. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
How did you get drawn to working for RP?
So I passed my RD exam in September of 2020. And then obviously started the job search then in October. I kind of took a couple of weeks off just to relax. But I obviously knew of RP for a long time before that. And I had actually followed a lot of the coaches already from RP. And I saw that one of the coaches was actually leaving. Paul was his name. He actually was a coach at or not a coach, but a dietitian at IMG too. So that's when I had followed him a little bit. So I knew of him and I saw that he was leaving. So I actually DM'd Nick Shaw in December of 2020, kind of inquiring about RP and joining, because I was like, okay, well, new year, probably a lot of people coming on, coach leaving, probably going to need another coach to come on or potential another coach, and reached out to him. And he basically was like, well, if you're not going to go for your master's, that's kind of where it ended. Like there wasn't really any potential. So I was like, okay. So I took a job actually down in Billings, Montana as an outpatient dietitian at a metabolism weight loss center. And in February of 2021, Spencer Nadolski, when he was still with RP, actually had posted on a story that he was looking for 2 RDs and a CSCS, which I had obviously. So it was kind of a last minute. So on Instagram stories, they only go for 24 hours. I saw his story on hour 23. So shot him a message, which we had already kind of DM'd back and forth. So I think it was kind of an advantage at that point. Set up a call with him. He put me through his quack test, what we call it. So asking about artificial sweeteners, obviously, a broken metabolism, stuff like that, what I thought. And eventually got a call set up with Nick after kind of going through a couple of test clients that Dr. Mel put me through. And again, I'd already kind of talked to Dr. Mel in the past, like because they were in Montana. So I was always like, hey, if I'd love to meet up with you guys, blah, blah, blah. So I passed the test, which was the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever fucking done in my life, even though I overcomplicated a lot more than it really needed to be. But 3 test clients that I had to go through: beginner, intermediate, and advanced, nutrition and training for all of those clients. And after that, I had a phone call with Nick, got into the coaches meeting in March. So I wasn't officially on when I got into the coaches meeting, but I was asking like Doug, who is the coaching manager or coaching, sends basically our payments and manages clients and stuff like that. I was like, hey, can I get like an email, or do we get an official email? And I just kind of got set up with an official email during the meeting by Charlie, actually. And after that, there was supposed to be more training by Spencer after that, like a couple more test clients of like email communication so they could see how I would email back and forth. Never really happened. Once I got the email, Doug sent me a client. Like I remember it was probably 2 or 3 days after that, I got my very first client. And it kind of just snowballed from there. It just started out really slow. So a couple of clients a week. And in May, May of 2021, I was holding about 25 clients at that time, working at the clinic still full time. And Spencer had asked me if I wanted to go more full time with it at that point, which I had asked Nick actually during our call when, I kind of got the official invitation to join is, can someone make this full time eventually? And he didn't say anything about it because a lot of RP coaches are still working as professors or working other jobs outside of this. But it was my goal and my vision to do this full time because I hate working an 8 to 5. I worked at Costco for 6 years, which was awesome. It's a great job. But just for my mental health, it wasn't something that I wanted to do again. So I really wanted to give all the effort that I could into RP. And obviously it's paid off. And as far as I know, I'm one of their top performing coaches now at this point in terms of client load, client retention, and client renewals.
That's pretty dope, dude. That's got to be a pretty good feeling. One of the premier organizations within the fitness realm, I'd say, at least in my opinion. So that's really cool. Congrats, bro.
Yeah. Thank you.
You have any real quick, because I know you could go, as I asked personally, that's how I first connected with you. I'm sure you could go on and on with good knowledge and advice, but do you have any just like quick little ideas of how you do such a good job of retaining clients and keeping new people come in the door?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that I did when I joined is I reached out to other RP coaches because I wanted to see how they were doing things. So it's kind of like getting a mentor. If people in the same field as you, like reach out to them. So people reached out to me and like, hey, what are you doing, or how are you doing this? So I reached out to a lot of RP coaches, got a lot of information from Alex Harrison, Nathan Jenkins on RP coaches. Those two were kind of like my mentors, I felt like, and ones that I reached out to a lot. Alex is a fucking robot when it comes to this. Like, he's so efficient. It's just crazy what he does. But everything is still personalized and whatnot. It's just, there's a lot of shortcuts that you can take and save time. So when your client load starts to grow a large amount, you have to become more efficient with your organization and your time. Like, you can't be slacking in certain areas. So as I started growing, I took what Alex and Nathan were doing overall and started just making my process a lot easier, a lot smoother. I looked at where I could save time. So using some templates on like emails and stuff like that. So for example, if I send a client a video a lot, I'm like, hey, this is a really good video. For example, I just actually saved one where Dr. Mike talks about getting ready for a fat loss phase. Super helpful video for a lot of clients. I've been sending it to a lot of clients. So instead of going to YouTube and copying the link again and pasting an email, there's shortcuts that you can do where it's like just a couple keystrokes and it, outputs this link, hyperlink. It's all nice and clean, saves time. So there's a couple other software things that I use a lot, and those are called Streak, which is essentially email organization. If you're looking to improve organization of your email box with, kind of giving, essentially what it does is it gives a client its own or their own folder. So any emails that you get from that client goes into that folder. It's like a file cabinet then for all of your clients or all the emails. So Streak is really good for organization. Text Expander is kind of what I use for expanding text. So kind of what I mentioned with the hyperlink of the YouTube video, you can do that for a lot of other things as well. On top of that, asking for client feedback. So there was a lot of times during the last year that I've sent out a Google form to clients. I'm like, what do you want to see? What do you like about the coaching process? One client actually brought up a really good recommendation of including a weekly email out to all my clients. So I think Tim Ferriss, I believe I got his name right. I think he does something similar, which is where I got the idea from. Basically, every Monday I send out email through Streak. So you can do a mail merge in there, which is super efficient. You just select all the boxes and it sends the email out to all of those clients, which is awesome, super efficient. But I do a top 5 with Hunter in that email. So it's very formative. So I do infographics in like one area, training tips in the next, like a picture or a couple pictures from my past week. So clients can get a little bit more. It's not like just, hey, I'm just giving this nutrition training plan. They get to know me a little bit better as well. Songs from the past week, client transformation, stuff like that. So those things have really accelerated, especially with the client retention overall of having people come back and also having people stay as well. But the biggest thing, in order to do all that, you have to reach out. Like you have to DM people. And that's where I've gotten, honestly, a lot of places in life is sliding into the DMs. It's how I met Matt Ogus, training with him and whatnot. So don't be afraid to shoot people a message, DM. And a lot of times, people shoot me a message, I'll be more than happy to chat up or give some helpful tips here and there.
It goes down in the DMs.
Yeah.
I thought you were about to say like, that's how I met my girlfriend or whatever, but that's really good advice, man. I think that's kind of at the point that I've been at recently too, is, as I'm picking up more clients, I'm like, holy shit, this is taking a lot of time, and being more efficient is the stuff that I've started to do. And you gave some really good pieces of advice. So I definitely got to implement some of that stuff. All my other coaches highly, highly suggest that stuff, because the more you can save time, it's nice mental clarity, get your life back a little bit more. And then,
yeah, I mean, the text expander is definitely an amazing piece, which I'd recommend a lot of people to, because you can make a really good response. And you can say, you can save that response if you want to, or you can always change it. But it helps save you a little bit of time if like a client asks like, hey, why are, or let's see, what's actually a really good one that I have. It's like, why are we doing this week? Or do you have some tips for increasing my water intake? Here's my list. So you have all these tips. You can add hyperlinks to certain stuff, hyperlinks to RP articles, etc. So I'll make them really good, and then that way I have them for later too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Saves you a lot of time, I'm sure, just doing it once and doing it well.
Yep.
Putting it out there. I really like the point you made about kind of like making it more personable too. That's something I used to do, was that weekly email and just kind of like give an update, tell people kind of like what's going on with the training. And it's something I need to get back to, because I think it's just, it gets you that bond that takes it to the next level almost, where they like respect you, they kind of like follow what's going on with you. And then of course you're providing some value in there too. So it's even more enticing. That's a really good piece of advice, man.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So don't want to take up too much of your time, but I'm interested in one more question for you, Hunter, because I know you're obviously a really sharp dude. So what do you do to continue to educate yourself? What are some of your go-to sources for that continual process of learning for you?
Yeah, I think the best one is, to be honest, is mass. I'm not sure if the mass review. I think that is one of the easiest ways to just kind of stay up to date on a lot of things that are coming out. The reason why I like mass so much too is they have the audio clips usually at the beginning of each research that they do, so you can kind of just listen to them discuss that if you're walking or whatever. So mass is really good. Weightology is another one that's similar that I kind of refer to a lot. So those two sources are where kind of I go down a rabbit hole if I want to. Outside of that, I do need to take continuing education for obviously being a registered dietitian. So we need 75 hours of continuing education, or credits, whatever they're called. And then also for the CSCS, I have to stay up to date on, it's a small amount, but it's nothing like the RD. So those are my main areas.
Shoot. Oh no. All right, guys. I think I lost Hunter for a second. I don't know if he can hear me, but I have a frozen screen. It might be on my end. It's Ohio Wi-Fi. I'm going to give it one more second. See if he comes back. Shoot him a message. Hunter, if you can hear me, I apologize. Oh, he dropped. Let's see. I'll try to shoot him a message. There we go. We're back.
I think that was my internet. My bad.
Oh, it's all good. I say it's just as likely to be mine out here. Sometimes this rural Ohio Wi-Fi isn't the best. Trying to think.
So I don't know what you last heard.
Yeah, you were telling me how the CSCS continuing education is a lot less than the RD, and that kind of cut out on my end.
Yeah. So the other ways that I stay, kind of up to date on a lot of stuff is honestly through Instagram too. There's a lot of researchers that you can follow, and they'll post like the most recent research or something that they've stumbled upon or recently got. And that is just another really great resource on Instagram, to be honest, too, of just kind of staying up to date on a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, man, you're I think the third person on the podcast that's told me that they are subscribers to MASS, which I think the acronym is like Monthly Application of Sports Science. Might be wrong there, but it's a great resource for me. I'm gonna have to hop on it now because third time's a charm. And for anybody else out there, really great minds behind that publication, and it's easy to consume too. Nothing too crazy high level, I think. But yeah, man, I think, as we all know, that continued education, it's the name of the game in terms of staying on top of one, just your overall knowledge, and then kind of like your ability to efficiently coach people too. So that's awesome to hear that you go about it in so many different ways. And you also have that kind of accountability with the RD and the CSCS to really lock it into, but very cool. Well, man, I really do appreciate your time. Like I said, from the first interaction I had with you in the Facebook group, Team Full Rom, for everybody watching, please admire my shaker cup and go check out the group because there's a lot of great stuff in there. But yeah, always appreciate people that are down to help out and provide advice. I think you gave so many good, like, practical tips. That's why I really like these podcasts, is when there's like practical things, there's XYZ that you can look into for your business. And we got a lot of that. So I really do appreciate your time, Hunter.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. If the people would like to follow you or look into your coaching, where could they find you?
So Instagram, most active, is just hunter_Pauley.rp. And then, of course, you can find me on the RP website under coaching as well. My bio's on there as well. And if email-wise, it's just hunter@rpstrength.com.
Yeah, guys. So I really appreciate you go over to Hunter's page. I'll provide the link in the show notes on Apple and YouTube and Spotify if you're feeling too lazy to type that in. But really cool pictures and a little bit of that motivation component too. I saw the shreds popping this morning. So definitely a good follow for everybody too. Yeah, man, really appreciate your time once again. I'll do my little outro for all the social medias. But guys, once again, I really appreciate you all for checking out the podcast and giving us a listen. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, be sure to leave a review, 5 stars if you feel like you gained some value, and then share it around with all your friends. And then, of course, for all my YouTubers out there, hitting that like, subscribe, bell notification. Leave any comments down in the comment section. I'll relay them to Hunter for you. We'll get the dialogue going. But until next time, guys, appreciate you. See you in episode 52.